Deuteronomy chapter 20. And so, as we kind of look through, we'll start with the first 4 verses, and I'll go ahead and read those. When you go out to battle against your enemies and see horses and chariots and people more numerous than you, do not be afraid of them. For the Lord your God is with you, who brought you up from the land of Egypt. So it shall be when you are on the verge of battle, that the priest shall approach and speak to the people. And he shall say to them, Hear, O Israel, today you are on the verge of battle with your enemies. Do not let your heart faint. Do not be afraid, and do not tremble or be terrified because of them. For the Lord your God is he who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies to save you. So, as we can see kind of from here and in many of the stories of the Old Testament, there's a common theme that you can see here. And what might one of those common themes be that you've read out of these passages today? One more time? The Lord is with you, but that's conditional, right? That's conditional. Good. What else?
The Lord will fight for you.
Okay. The Lord will fight for you. Jericho, the Lord will fight for you. Right? They didn't have to even lift a sword or a battering ram or anything to tear down those walls, did they? So, that's another. What else do you see in those passages that he says, don't do this? Don't be what?
Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid. Because the Lord is going to fight for you. Because I'm going to be with you. And so when you are outnumbered, don't be afraid. When you see horses and chariots and your enemies, don't be afraid. And man, is that a lesson for us today. We serve the same God who brought the Israelites out of Egypt. And so he says there in verse 2 that the priest shall approach and speak to the people. So obviously the priest is the one who's supposed to help the people out. And as you can see here, this is a spiritual type of talk, isn't it? Do not be afraid. They're about to do something very physical, going into war. But the priest is standing before them, not the commander of the army. So that's something to take note as well. So we see here, Hear, O Israel, verse 3, Today you are on the verge of battle with your enemies. Do not let your heart faint. Do not be afraid. Do not tremble or be terrified because of them. How many ways does he have to say, don't have fear? Well, he did it pretty well, right? Don't tremble. Don't be afraid. Don't let your heart be struggling. So he's very emphatic here about this. And so you can really understand and see now why that's a constant thing that he's telling them, because it would be natural to see that you're outnumbered and be fearful. But do not let your heart be faint. I brought you out of Egypt. You saw what I could do. You saw that I plundered them into the Red Sea, and you walked on dry ground. Any comments or questions through verse 4? All right. So, as you can see here, again, we're going to move on to verse 5 through 8. Can I get a reader 5 through 8? Ron?
Then the officers shall speak to the people, saying, What man is there who has built a new house and has not dedicated it? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in the battle and another man dedicate it. Also, what man is there who has planted a vineyard and has not eaten of it? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in the battle and another man eat of it. And what man is there who is betrothed to a woman and has not married her? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in the battle and another man marry her. The officer shall speak further to the people, and say, what man is there who is fearful and faint-hearted? Let him go and return to his house, lest the heart of his brethren faint like his heart.
Thank you. So all these people should walk off in shame, right? It's not what it says. It literally means what it's saying. Do you have something you need to take care of? Go on. It's pretty remarkable when you read that, right? So you take into account verses 1 through 4, especially verse 4. God says, I'm going to fight for you. Do you need to take care of something? Go ahead, because I got this. All right? That's how I read this. Lest he die in battle, and another man dedicate it. Lest he die in battle, and another man eat of it. Lest he die in battle, and another man marry her. God is essentially still saying, I'm fighting for you. I'm going to save you. And he's letting exceptions, essentially, kind of take place. And so you can see through verse 4, again, he's going to fight for you against your enemies to save you. Let's go to question 1. Note a few occasions of where Israel faced superior or inferior forces. What might you have put for those? Mike?
Well, that's the Egyptians.
Yeah.
That's kind of their first test, and certainly an overpowering force.
Right. Impossible, insurmountable odds. Walked away. Right? As I read through 5 through 8, I kind of think about the Gideons and the Midianites, right? He whittles down the army to how many? Do you remember? 300. They stand around, surround them, torches, pitchers, and a shout for Gideon and for the Lord, right? And what happens? The Midianites destroy themselves, essentially. And so you also have Hezekiah, right? And the Assyrians and the angel who kills, you remember that number? It was a much larger number. Anybody? 185,000 dead by one angel. And so if you think about those types of scenarios and how God has saved his people many times, that we serve, again, that same God. We serve him today. And so that should bring you confidence. It should bring you peace. It should bring you a stability of heart, that when you go before him to ask him of something, that it can be accomplished if it's his will. And so take those things to heart. And so, again, he's essentially there also in verse 4, I'm going to fight for you against your enemies. I'm going to crush them. And question number 2, who was allowed to go home and why? We kind of talked about that. Ron read it. But you have the guy who bought a new house. He's got one who's planted a new vineyard. He hasn't even gotten a chance to have the reward of that yet. He's engaged to a woman, hasn't been able to marry her yet. And you have another, verse 8. What does verse 8 talk about?
Someone who's fearful doesn't have a strong heart for something.
Right. Somebody who is actually fearful. Now, is he going against what the priest told him to do? Yeah. So do you want somebody like that out on the battlefield? Certainly not. Go ahead, Hank.
Well, if you read the last part of it, there's a reason they don't want it, because it's contagious.
Right.
Fear is contagious.
Yes.
Very good. And so, if you can't do what the Lord is saying, stay home. Don't be a part of this. And so you can kind of understand now who is speaking here. Is it the priest? who's giving these exceptions? It's not the way my Bible reads. It says the officers, or maybe the commanders or the leaders of the army. All right, so we've shifted. We got that spiritual talk in 1 through 4, and now you got the physical talk 5 through 8. All right, any comments, questions through these passages? Okay. Let's go through 8 through 15. Who can read that for me? Mike, thanks.
And the officer shall speak further to the people and say, who is the man that is afraid and faint-hearted? Let him depart and return to his house, so that he might not make his brother's heart melt like his heart. And the officers have finished speaking to the people. They shall appoint commanders of armies at the head of the people. When you approach a city to fight against it, you shall offer the terms of peace. If it agrees to make peace with you and opens to you, then all the people who are found in it shall become your forced labor and shall serve you. However, if it does not make peace with you, but makes war against you, then you shall besiege you. When the Lord your God gives it to your hand, you shall strike all the men in it with the edge of the sword. Only the women and the children and the animals and all that is in the city, all its spoil, you shall take as booty for yourself, and you shall use the spoil for your enemies, which the Lord your God has given you. Thus you shall do to all the cities that are very far from you, which are not of the cities of these nations nearby.
Okay. So I want you to pay attention very close to verse 15. What is he talking about? There's a particular location that he mentions here in that verse. Because the verses we read later on, there's going to be different rules. So what's the difference between these cities?
The ones in 15 are outside of Canaan.
Okay, outside of Canaan, far off, right? So that's the thing to really kind of key in on. And what are they to do with these people? In your own words? Kill them? Utterly destroy them?
Destroy all the males.
Okay. Get rid of the males. Women and children, do they get to go? They get to leave? Do they get to stay? They live? They live. They become slaves. What about the animals? Take them. There's, I think yours said booty. They're yours to take. If you go after them and you deem that it's necessary and you're allowed to take it. Also, people are essentially put under tribute also. What's that? What's paying tribute? That?
They would pay taxes.
Yeah.
Their captors.
Okay. So it's not like we're paying the U.S. government our taxes, right? This is an additional tax that everybody has to join up to do, to pay tribute so that they don't get overrun again, right? And so that's the tribute aspect to it. They kill all the males, they spare everyone else, even the livestock. Okay. Go back to verse 9 real quick with me. And so it shall be when the officers have finished speaking to the people that they shall make captains of the armies to lead the people. To me, this is a weird time frame. Wouldn't you have already, in my mind, my man's heart, you have already had your army organized, right? Everything's all worked out. You got your commander, then you got your lieutenants and captains and generals, and you got all the high guys up here, and all that's worked out, and then you got the lower. Do you have a house that you need to go take care of? Okay, you can't be a captain, but you can. I get the idea that this is happening almost in the heat of the moment, right? So again, it's more of a, God's already got this. You want to organize yourselves? Go ahead. But you don't got to do it months in advance. Because God's going to fight for you. He already has the win. And so that was something that I thought was really remarkable here in this passage. And I hope that I'm not reading that wrong, but that's the way it looks to me. Any comments or questions about that?
Well, Israel didn't have a standing army,
Right.
so they didn't have that organization in place. It was every man called to fight, brethren called to fight. So until they did come together to prepare to go, they did have leaders,
Sure.
but because they didn't have a standing army, it was every man called to fight, and then the exceptions were pulled out. And this isn't the first time,
Right.
that they were told the fearful to go home, don't stay. So to me, it was just that they didn't need to organize until they were ready to go to the battle.
Right. Any other comments, thoughts, questions? Okay. Let's keep going. Who can I have to read verses 16 through 20?
I want to say,
Go ahead.
verse 10,
Yeah.
the first thing that's supposed to happen is they have to try to make peace first and foremost.
Right.
And then after that, go for the war. So, it was an exit strategy of the people that were about to be attacked, because we know that through what Rahab says, that they had known who God was, who these people were, and all that kind of stuff. They knew all of that. But here was that exit strategy that you didn't have to close your gates, you didn't have to do any of that. There was going to be terms of peace. You may not like those terms, but these are the terms.
Right.
And, they chose not to, and so they were destroyed because of that.
Yeah.
I guess I would look at it this way. As much evil that was going around and God was ready to purify that land, He was still giving those people one last chance. Just one last chance to do the right thing.
Yeah. And it's very important to notice, again, what the context of verse 10 is, right? Is it those in Canaan, or is it outside of Canaan? It's not in Canaan, right? So that's a very important piece of the puzzle. All right. Reader from 16 through 20, please. Go ahead, Elijah.
But of the cities of these people which the Lord your God gives you as an inheritance, you shall let nothing that breathes remain alive, but you shall utterly destroy them. The Hittite and the Amorite and the Canaanite and the Perizzite and the Hivite and the Jebusite, just as the Lord your God has commanded you, lest they teach you to do according to all their abominations which they have done for their gods, and you sin against the Lord your God. When you besiege a city for a long time while making war against it to take it, you shall not destroy its trees by wielding an axe against them, if you can eat of them. Do not cut them down to use in the siege, for the tree of the field is man's food. Only the trees which you know are not trees for food you may destroy and cut down to build siege works against that city that makes war with you until it is subdued.
All right, thanks. So starting off in verse 16, the cities of these people which the Lord your God gives you as an inheritance. What's that inheritance? The promised land. Who is that promise given and then passed down? Abraham? Right. So this is the land promise coming into fulfillment, right? This is in preparation for it. This entire chapter is not what has already happened. This is how you approach warfare, right? These are principles, as my Bible has a little heading here. This is how you are to go about it in preparation for it. And so, again, that confidence that the Israelites, I think, would have gleaned from these words. I'm giving you this land. Yes, you have a conditional thing to do. You have to obey me. You have to follow me. You have to do all that I'm asking you. But I am giving you this land. Go ahead, Paul.
Faith and trust.
Absolutely.
And you can trust in God. and move forward with this. He will fight for them. He told them that before, and they had to tell them.
Right. And so, a great parallel that I hope you have seen before is the Israelites had this land of Canaan to obtain. As Christians today, what do you have to obtain? Heaven. Has God fought for you? Has God provided an inheritance for you? Absolutely. And so, just like Brother Paul said, if you have faith and you have trust, if you have that believing obedience, you can make it to that land. He's going to fight for you, just like he fought for the Israelites.
A child of God. It's all his. You're just a caretaker.
For sure.
What you accomplish in life is what he allowed you to accomplish. So join. Love God and keep his commandments.
Right. Zacchaeus. Okay. All right. And so going back again to verse 15, there's the caveat again. And these are the cities which are not of the cities of these nations, right? These are not far from you. And so of these cities, these peoples of the Lord, the God, will give you as an inheritance. You shall let nothing that breathes remain alive. So if you remember what Saul did with the Amalekites, what did he do? What was he told, and what did he do? Remember that story? This was kind of the downfall of his whole entire kingship.
He was told to utterly destroy, and he utterly destroyed except the king and some of the animals. And he took the king back. Basically, he didn't think he was showing off, but he might have well been.
Yeah.
But he was told to utterly destroy, and he did.
Right. And he got a little anxious, didn't he? He was waiting for Samuel to come. I think it was about a week before Samuel came. And what did Saul use as an excuse? The people. The people wanted me to do this. The people wanted me to take the livestock. He wanted me to keep the king. He wanted me... Who's the king? What were you supposed to do? Right? That type of situation, that conversation happened between Samuel once he came. And remember what Samuel did? He took up a sword. He hacked the king into pieces. Because he was going to do what the Lord had said. Saul was afraid maybe of the people, apparently, and he wouldn't do it. And so, as you kind of see from the principles of warfare, Saul really made a mess of things with that situation. Verse 17, but you shall utterly destroy them. And he tells them exactly who it is that they're to destroy. The Hittite, the Amorite, the Canaanite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, the Jebusite. Just as the Lord has commanded you. Why? Why did they need to do that?
They were idol worshipers and like other people, so God gave them chance after chance. He made this promise, so they wanted rid of it.
Cleanse the land. Purify it, right? Lest they teach you to do according to all their abominations, verse 18, which they had done for their gods, and you sin against the Lord your God. And so that's a very poignant passage here. Very, very clear what they were to do. I'm sure very hard to carry out. But nonetheless, that is what they were to do. And so you can see from verses 16 through 18, kill every person, prevent any type of idolatry or the abominations that they do for their gods. Get rid of the influence altogether. But you have there in verse 19 and 20 some things that they need to pay attention about. What did they have to pay attention to? Like,
Got food out there, they want to take care of that food.
right.
So before you start cutting down a bunch of trees, make sure it's not a fruit-bearing tree. We make your seed work out of wood and everything.
Right. I'm giving you the land. Preserve the food, because you're going to be there. Don't get rid of it. There's wisdom in that, right? So, I have no idea. I've never grown a fruit tree in my life, but how long does it take a fruit tree to actually produce fruit?
Several years, that doesn't do it.
So if you take the fruit tree down, you wipe them all out,
Years, that is.
you're going to struggle, right? That's an unnecessary struggle. So take the trees that do not bear fruit and use those as siege tools, warfare.
I just want to point out, I think that he says that because a lot of times whenever we're very short-sighted, he understands he's kind of looking to the future of that, and there is a certainty that they will be there.
Right. It's your inheritance. So, very good. Any other comments or thoughts? Questions? Okay. And so you see also through the particular rules as far as besieging a city, verse 19. Besiege a city for a long time while making war against it to take it. You shall not destroy its trees, but you can take the others. Verse 20, only the trees which you know are not for food you may destroy and cut down to build siege works against a city that makes war with you until it is subdued. So there doesn't seem to necessarily be a time frame here. It just says if you're going to do it and it's going to be a long time, take care of it. Ron.
I was just going to point out what you were reading and commenting on. Again, the trees that were to be cut, there was a specific purpose for that. And as we know, in some tactics of battle, you just clear cut everything,
Right.
you just burn everything, which oftentimes happens. But as was mentioned and you emphasized, this is for preparation of their habitation.
Yeah, it's for their betterment as they come in to inhabit the land. All right, let's jump into chapter 21. If anyone is found slain, lying in the field in the land which the Lord your God is giving you to possess, and it is not known who killed him, then your elders and your judges shall go out and measure the distance from the slain man to the surrounding cities. And it shall be that the elders of the city nearest to the slain man will take a heifer, which has not been worked and which has not pulled with a yoke. The elders of that city shall bring the heifer down to a valley with flowing water, which is neither plowed nor sown, and they shall break the heifer's neck there in the valley. Then the priests, the sons of Levi, shall come near, for the Lord your God has chosen them to minister to him and to bless in the name of the Lord. By their word every controversy and every assault shall be settled. And all the elders of that city nearest to the slain man shall wash their hands over the heifer whose neck was broken in the valley. Then they shall answer and say, our hands have not shed this blood, nor have our eyes seen it. Provide atonement, O Lord, for your people Israel, whom you have redeemed, and do not lay innocent blood to the charge of your people Israel. And atonement shall be provided on their behalf for the blood. So you shall put away the guilt of innocent blood from among you when you do what is right in the sight of the Lord. What is happening here? What is this governing, or what is this about? Somebody's been killed. And what do we do about it? We got a sequence of events to take care of, right? We're going to measure. We're going to get a heifer. We're going to take it down to the flowing river. We're going to break its neck. We got some stuff to do. But this is how to handle an unsolved murder, right? Someone was killed. They don't know. No one has witnessed it. There's nothing that they can do about it. This is how they were to handle that. As maybe confusing or as unkind maybe as it may be to those people who were in this situation, this is their way to offer atonement. Verse 8, provide atonement.
Can I ask something on that?
Yeah.
I didn't fully understand this. Is it because they are at war and they found somebody that they don't know if they killed during the course of war? Or is this just they're in their new land, and because they don't know how this individual died, they're doing this for atonement for it?
My thoughts are, I think that this is now beyond warfare. And I think this is like everyday life. They've moved into the land, and here's what to do when you find a dead body. And it's pretty obvious that something happened to this man, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Hank.
I was gonna say, it's not a dead body, it's not just dead, it's slain.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, there's evidence of foul play, right?
Right.
Go ahead, Paul.
It has to be a blood atonement. And they're going to accept that. Heaven.
Right.
And move on. Until something else.
Sure. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, the fact that he's saying measure to a city, I don't think he's saying measure to an enemy city. You
No.
make an effort out of that enemy city. So it looks like whenever you're finally settled, the cities are out there, this is how you need to handle this.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's talking about war, I think it's still along the lines of, their domestic life, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would agree with that. And, this it places a lot of emphasis on the elders, right? The elders of the city nearest to the slain man will take the heifer.
Well, wait a minute.
Go ahead.
Are we still under the impression that the life
That's the way I read it. Now, it looks that it's good enough for a heifer, but that heifer had to have special qualifications, didn't it? You see that? The heifer couldn't have been worked. It couldn't have pulled a yoke. And so that's very specific.
Oh, yeah, not been worked.
And so there's a special requirement there that they had to meet for this particular situation. And so you have the elders involved. Then you have verse 5, then the priests come near. And so you kind of have a lot going on here, right? With different people involved. And verse 6, all the elders of that city nearest the slain man shall wash their hands over the heifer after the neck had been broken. Right? And so, again, these are governing principles. These are the things that they were to use as a way to help themselves throughout their life in Canaan. And, excuse me.
does that mean that when they are washing their hands, this is showing that they have no blood on their hands from this death? Is that the significance?
I believe that's where I would glean that from this passage. It's not exactly clear, but yeah, that's how I look at it. They shall break the neck at the end of verse 4. It says, and they shall break the heifer's neck there in the valley. Then they wash their hands over the heifer, right, in verse 5. So what I get from this is when you break an animal's neck, is there blood involved?
Not necessarily.
Not normally. So there's a sacrifice, okay? But the blood's not, and I'm not trying to be gross or cruel here, but the blood's not flowing through into the river, okay, to make it disgusting. And so we have a death. We have a sacrifice for this particular person who was slain. And then you keep going down into verse 5 here, and it says, by their word, every controversy and every assault shall be settled. Go ahead, Zach.
I was just going to reference back to Numbers 19.
Okay.
Where a similar ritual is performed dealing with the heifer and purification of sin by the priest outside the camp. So it's not an exact match. They slaughtered it. It had a lot to do with blood.
Right.
Numbers 19 here, you just mentioned it doesn't. But it was a red heifer without blemish. So there's some similarity there. But regarding the washing the hands of innocent blood, I implied from this, or inferred rather, that the city closest incurs the guilt because the roads were not necessarily safe for travel, hence this undetected homicide.
Yeah.
Now that's an insignificant inference, but it might help explain why the nearest city incurs the guilt.
Sure.
Because out of all the other cities, they would be the ones to maintain or promote some sort of local law or provisions for safe travel between cities. I mean, it's hard to determine that, of course, but
Right.
just trying to understand a little bit more why the nearest city.
Right, and I think some of it would be the likelihood of, the actual one who did the murdering to be from the nearest city. Let's be honest, a body is not easy to maneuver, right, when it's deceased. Go ahead, Nancy.
Well, also, this made me think of when Cain killed Abel, and his blood cried up to God, because
Right.
God does not take the taking of a life lightly.
For sure.
It's a serious matter to God. So even though they didn't know who did it, anytime there was certainly sin in the camp, there had to be a sacrifice for that. They didn't know who, but to purify that area, they had to do that, because that blood would continue to cry out to the Lord.
Absolutely. And as you think about kind of on top of what you were saying, you go, I think it's Proverbs 6, where there's abominations that are listed, right? Hands that are, or feet that are swift to evil, but the shedding of innocent blood is a part of that abomination. There's 6 things the Lord hates, right? Lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood. And so, again, this is certainly foreign to us to think this way. And obviously some technology has changed to where maybe we can find out who's slain and who's not, whereas they could not have. But these are, again, governing principles on how to help themselves through government. Keep going down. We have, by their word, every controversy and every assault shall be settled. That's pretty interesting too, where they can, essentially cover some matters here that need to be addressed. And so, again, though, they shall come near, for the Lord your God has chosen them to minister to him and to bless in the name of the Lord. They had to use the name here, right? They had to be doing this for a very specific purpose, which a lot is what Nancy just alluded to, which was getting peace, providing atonement for the land, because a man had been slain there. Verse 6, all the elders of that city nearest to the slain man shall wash their hands over the heifer whose neck was broken in the valley. Then they shall answer and say, our hands have not shed this blood, nor have our eyes seen it. There was no witness, or at least the witness isn't speaking up. But they have to proclaim that, right? That we haven't seen it, we don't know what happened. Paul?
Okay, then the priest, number 5, and then we come on down to verse 8. God requires an atonement for the death of that man, and it appears he'll accept this animal without blemish if it's done properly, for that shedding of the blood.
Right.
For God has already spoken without shedding blood.
Yeah. And you can see that,
Atonement.
and you can see that the priests are supposed to essentially, they're asking for that atonement, right? They're saying, provide atonement, O Lord. This is a request for that. And so, atonement shall be provided on their behalf for the blood, so you shall put away the guilt of innocent blood from among you when you do what is right in the sight of the Lord. And so we kind of, we got 5 minutes left.
Does that seem to be right, what I said, or not?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Any other comments or questions there from 1 through 9? Ron?
Just, again, looking at the very point that you're mentioning here, this atonement is a reconciliation. There was a wrong done, and God wants wrongs turned into rights.
Yeah.
And that's the principle here. Even in a case of an unknown murder, there's an action that needs to be taken to make it right.
Absolutely.
That's what you just read.
Yeah. Make peace, right? Provide atonement, O Lord.
Right, reconciling those people back, because as we sometimes feel when an atrocity occurs or something happens, sometimes we feel that even though we aren't directly involved
Yeah.
with a significant loss,
Yeah.
unless we are totally desensitized, which we shouldn't be.
Right. Yeah, you kind of have that helpless feeling. You
Yes.
wish you could do something. Well, here it is. You can do something.
Right.
And they had specific sequences of events and how to do that. And that provided order, it provided organization, and it provided a way for the people to have an outlet for, an atrocity that has occurred. This could have been a brother, a cousin, a relative. And so you needed to make some type of preparation ready for something such as this. Okay. Let's go over into 2 Corinthians real quick. 2 Corinthians chapter 1. 2 Corinthians chapter 1, 8 through 11. Can I get a reader to read that as soon as you get there? 2 Corinthians 1, 8 through 11, please. Go ahead, Philip.
For we do not want you to be ignorant, brethren, of our trouble which came to us in Asia, that we were burdened beyond measure, above strength, so that we despaired even of life. Yes, we had the sentence of death in ourselves, that we should not trust in ourselves, but in God who raises the dead, who delivered us from so great a death, and does deliver us, in whom we trust that He will deliver us. He will still deliver us. You also help Him together in prayer for us, that thanks may be given by many persons on our behalf for the gift granted to us through me.
Okay, thank you. I apologize. I'm going to kind of shift back to chapter 20 real quick. I didn't mean to go over this until I wanted to get to this before I started 21. But I want you to read Paul's words here again in your mind. Trouble, which came to us in Asia, burdened beyond measure. Verse 10, who delivered us from so great a death, and does deliver us, in whom we trust, helping together, prayer for us, thanks. You see those words there? I look at this as the same words that the Israelites were given in chapter 20, verse 4. I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to save you. I'm going to crush your enemies. Paul, what happened to him? Trouble beyond measure, but they had strength. They had God who raises the dead. And so I hope that that is a helpful passage to you, maybe when you're suffering in some way in this life. When an army is, innumerous, and you can see across the valley, and there they are, they fill the entire hillside, and you look at yours, and it's not so much, don't fear. And so when we look about the New Testament, and we see, these comforting words, whether it's through suffering or stress or anxiety or doing anything that you can imagine that's for the Lord. We're not to be intimidated. We're not to be intimidated or fearful. And why is that we're not supposed to be intimidated? Because we have the truth. We have His revealed Word. We have everything that pertains to life and godliness. We're David up against Goliath. But we have it. We have it all. And we can have it all through obedient faith through our Lord. And so I hope that that's helpful for you. And looks like we need to end there. But appreciate everybody's kind thoughts and participation.